All right. Well, we won't wait any longer since the recording did start. So I do just want to mention that we are going to record the webinar. We do provide copies of this. You'll get it through email following the webinar, and we also do post it on our website. So if any of you are uncomfortable or are not able to be on camera, just no problem if you shut it off. But other than that, we're happy to see your faces and welcome you to our Business School Indigenous Engagement Survey and updates from Luminary webinar. We are going to be talking about a couple of our important programs that we're delivering, starting with the engagement survey round two, and then we will talk about our newly launched Charter for Change program, and then the Indigenous Innovation Summit that's coming up in September. So, before we get into it, I just want to take a moment to welcome you all and also acknowledge the lands and territories that you're all joining us from. I know that we are across Canada and we're gathering on many Indigenous territories across Turtle Island. We always welcome our participants to take a moment to share where they're joining from in the chat and acknowledge that territory. So, for me, good morning. Waliaksik Bugum Sidwen, Nin Deloise Terry Lynn Morrison, Atlewit Listiguch. I am Terry Lynn Morrison, the Executive Director at Luminary. I come from Listiguch, which is in Mi'kma'ki on the East Coast, but I am joining today from Treaty 6 territory here out in Edmonton. So welcome, and I hope to see some of our where you're joining from in the chat as we're moving along and you get to know each other a bit more. I'd like to take a minute just to acknowledge our sponsors and partners with Luminary who are contributing to the funding of our organization. So we do have the Government of Canada through their Innovation, Science and Economic Development Strategic Science Fund, who has put in some funding from 2024 to 2029. So we are just about at the halfway mark of that. So very thankful for their support and how we were able to get Luminary off the ground. We also have a very important partnership with Royal Bank of Canada, who has committed to supporting our work for the next 2 years, and also our Luminary Charter for Change partners. So we have just 12 right now, and we're growing every day. Two came in this morning, but we'll talk a bit more about the Charter for Change program and how your organizations can join us. But that's also another important partner in the work that we're doing over here at Luminary. So for today, we have a short agenda. You know, we like to wrap this up within the hour. So we're done the welcome and introductions. We are going to hear from Dr. Tasha Brooks, who is the Senior Research Lead here at Luminary, who will talk about the year two of the Business School Engagement Survey. Then over to Kelly, who will talk about the Charter for Change Partner Program. I will wrap it up with the Indigenous Innovation Summit and everything that you need to know about that. We'll talk a little bit about what's next in the coming months as we kick it off and get heading to the summer solstice. And we'll have an opportunity to talk, to hear from the audience and talk about any questions or have a discussion period at the end. So we have a lot of information to share. So if you do have questions, if you could either put them in the chat or take note, you will have an opportunity during the last 10 minutes of the webinar to ask your questions and chat with us about anything that you want to talk about. So like I mentioned, joined today by my colleagues, Dr. Tasha Brooks and Kelly Lindsay, and I am going to pass it over to Kelly to give a few opening comments before we get into the program. So over to you, Kelly.
Tremendous. Thank you very much. Tanzaya to everybody. Kelly Lindsay's from the Treaty 6 and Métis homeland of Saskatchewan today. Welcome to everybody. As Terry Lynn said, we're going to be talking about the business school survey and providing some other contextual information. And in the people who registered, what was really interesting that in addition to business schools, really pleased to see some other folks we've got who've come along to sort of better understand why and how we're going to use a business school benchmarking exercise to advance Indigenous innovation and our reconciliation efforts. We've got Marcia from Indigenous Institutes Consortium and Six Nations Polytechnique. Gabriel Dumont Institute, you've come here to hear about what is happening with business schools. Robin McClay with Fulbright Canada. Just a tremendous a group who's come together uh, to listen to how we're mobilizing the second survey. So this survey started last year, and you're going to hear more about that. But if we can harness and connect the academic community with Indigenous enterprises, organizations, and economic development corporations, we can foster more economic innovation, indigenize curriculum in business schools and other academic areas, and foster more partnerships for well-being and economic innovation. So I just want to acknowledge the other folks that have come along. You'll see the connection and how this is going to benefit all of us moving forward. So with that, let's roll into it. Over to you, Tasha.
Thanks, Kelly. So, Ait Native, Ait Konasi Lamnama. It's good to see you all. Antha Samatinia, Tanitsanat Kwamatsin. My traditional name is Samatinia. I come from Cowichan tribes on my mother's side and English, Irish, Scottish descent on my father's. It's nice to see you all today. And a shout out to Brian Weber, I see in here, who supported me through my first teaching experience ever back in the day. So I'm going to walk us through the 2026 Business School Engagement Survey results. So I want to just give a brief overview of what we learned with our 2025 survey before we jump in what's going to come ahead with 2026. Before this work, there was no really clear national benchmark for Indigenous engagement. And so this 2025 survey, it really helped give us that picture. It gives us a way to understand where business schools are at now, what kind of supports and strategies are emerging, and how Luminary can better support institutions to move forward. And so the goal is to build upon this national benchmark. We would like to track progress over time, identify our shared challenges, and help inform programming, research collaboration, curriculum, and support schools wherever they are in their Indigenous engagement journey. So in 2025, 48 institutions completed the survey. That included 30 university business schools and 18 college business schools. The survey reached institutions across Ontario, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, Quebec, and Newfoundland. And so as we move into this next iteration, I think there's a real opportunity to really try to broaden our participation. We would especially love to hear from the regions and the institution types that were less represented in 2025 to really help shape this solid national conversation. So in the 2025 report, one of the first things that we learned is that institutions are often further ahead in business schools than tracking their overall Indigenous engagement data. At the institutional level, we have 67% that tracked Indigenous student metrics, 52% tracked Indigenous faculty metrics, and 48% tracked Indigenous staff metrics. And now at the individual business school level, that's where things decreased a little. Those numbers were about 10% on average lower. We also saw a clear strategy gap. And so just over half of business schools could point to an Indigenous strategy, but only 14% actually had a standalone Indigenous strategy. So most are embedding this work in their broader inclusion or institutional strategies. And so at the wider institutional level, we have 76% that are formally responding to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. But fewer than half of the business schools had done so. And so moving along to curriculum, and this is another area where progress varied. So almost half of business schools reported offering at least one Indigenous course within the last 3 years. So our Western province business schools, they were a little more likely to report Indigenous courses at 55%, while still there is a very limited number that integrate Indigenous content into the courses. So there's a real opportunity here to engage in curriculum development, to create curriculum episodes like case studies that can be integrated into core courses. Student support, it is present, but often not specifically within the business schools. So we did have 66% of business schools reported that yes, there is student support, but it's in the broader institution. And we also noted that there is seven of the business schools that reported having an Indigenous-led student group. And so finally, here we have partnerships and research. This is where we are experiencing a little bit of gap as it relates to Indigenous engagement and advancing Indigenous economic priorities. So while we do have 68% of business schools reported being engaged in some form of Indigenous research, we found that only one research project identified partnering with an Indigenous entrepreneur, and only four reported partnering with an Indigenous Economic Development Corporation. So the opportunity here is huge because there are more than 500 Indigenous Economic Development Corporations in Canada and more than 50,000 Indigenous entrepreneurs. So the overall message here is clear. You know, we do have some engagement underway, but we're seeing uneven capacity throughout our institutions that we would love to help support. So the value of you participating in this survey. One of the most important benefits is that each institution will be receiving a individualized benchmark report. So this means that, you know, not only will you be contributing to the broader nation data, but you will get something useful back that is going to help, you know, have a clear sense of what your strengths are, where are the gaps, what sort of opportunities exist. And this can also help support, you know, institutional planning, any sort of accreditation work, internal reporting and some strategic conversations that I'm sure go on at institutions. And Luminary also is undertaking ways to help shape and support this, including doing webinars like this. You're going to hear about or from some of our Indigenous scholars and what sort of research they're doing in our future webinars. And we are, creating knowledge networks and have done numerous engagement sessions. So a key point that I really want to emphasize here is that um, talking about confidentiality. So the survey is not about ranking institutions or publicly identifying who is doing well and who, might have some extra work to do. Your individual responses, they will remain confidential. And so you could see the findings that I just spoke about. It's in aggregate form. So while you receive that individualized report, that information is not going to be publicly released. An institution might want to share that they have completed the survey, and you're more than willing to do so. If you do want Luminary to, highlight that you completed the survey, there will be and something in the consent form that addresses that and a question in the survey that will allow us to share that if you would like us to do so. So some schools may wonder whether or not they should participate, especially, if they're just beginning this sort of work. And the answer is yes. There is no minimum requirement of engagement that an institution should have done before undertaking this survey. And the survey is really meant to capture that full spectrum of institutional experiences, from the schools that have these well-developed strategies to the schools that are just beginning this journey. And that's what's going to make the results really meaningful if we do capture that really fulsome understanding of what is going on nationwide. So I would say, an institution's progress really starts with knowing where you are today and being able to capture that long-term progress and hopefully long-term growth. And so for this year's survey, institutions, you can prepare by gathering information at two different levels. So at the institutional level, that's going to include just starting to gather Indigenous student demographics, faculty and staff demographics, if there is Indigenous strategies or plans. What does your governing bodies look like? Do you have any sort of reconciliation initiatives underway? Those sorts of questions are also going to be present at the business school level. So knowing that information as well for the business school. But additionally, at the business school level, it's going to include things like, do you offer any sort of Indigenous courses or Indigenous specific curriculum? Um, is there any sort of student support or programs at the business school level? What sort of Indigenous partnerships is underway? And are there any Indigenous research projects and initiatives currently underway as well? So I know that this sounds probably like a lot of information to gather because it is, and especially for one person. So I would say the strongest approach is to identify a survey lead, and then knowing who to bring in as a collaborator to help complete this survey. So a good process might be to involve a dean or associate dean, perhaps program chairs. Maybe there's some faculty that really understand in depth the work that is going on at the institution. It could also be individuals at the research office, maybe Indigenous education. So different people are going to know different parts of the story. And the way our survey works is that you are able to pass it off. There's different individuals can take on different modules for this survey. And so there's this really seamless approach to getting it completed by multiple people. So, our next steps. The 2026 survey is going to launch this month. Data collection is going to take place between June and July. Then data analysis will then be July, August, hopefully. And then the national findings are going to be released at our Indigenous Innovation Summit in September. So, our ask is to participate, help complete the national picture, and just use this process as well as an opportunity to reflect on your own institution's Indigenous engagement survey. So, Heitsapka, thank you. Passing it over to Terry Lynn.
No, over to Kelly.
Kelly.
Thank you very much. Great overview. You can see the process. We've learned a lot from last year, so we're sharing some of the lessons and insights from the participants last year. How many business schools are there in Canada? Well, there's about 66 to 70 university business schools. There's about 65 colleges and CEGEPs that have dedicated business school deans. And there are 55 Indigenous controlled institutions. Uncertain about how many have Indigenous admin and business programs, but let's guess around 2025. So the ecosystem is about 175. Based on what you heard from Tasha and what we learned last year is, I'll use 3 examples. 59% of business schools that participated in the survey do not have a strategy. So 48. So that means those that did not participate, probably most of those don't have. So we estimate that 3/4 do not have a strategy. They talk about curriculum. There are 44 or 39 courses. We have maybe 20 to 40 functional case studies. So there's a demand and need for curriculum, for case studies. So how this knowledge is helped, and I think the most important thing, and that's what's going to lead to the Charter for Change partner program, by listening to the communities and where they're at, Luminary is able to respond. So in February, we focused our Ignite Leadership Forum on strategy and curriculum. So it's about helping everybody where they're at. And so you can accelerate your strategies by learning from others. You can be part of new collaborative and cooperative programming models for case studies and curriculum. We want to be showcasing real Indigenous entrepreneurs and ACDEV corporations and organizations and sort of really light it up. So it's the application of the survey knowledge that I think is really quite exciting. So that is all being loaded into what we call the Charter for Change partner program. We had a charter in 2020 and 2021 with 150 charter partners that signed on to a planning strategy to create the Luminary strategy. We're now introducing the Charter for Change partner program, which is free. We've removed the membership levels. Schools can sign on and other academic institutions. And basically, it has 4 pathways. It's going to help you with strategy, curriculum, leadership, professional development. and basically move this community of practice to work with our Indigenous enterprise community, entrepreneurs, Indigenous economic development corporations, NGOs. So take a look. You can see the link. And like I said, I think we're approaching over 20 that have already signed up. But the goal is to have over 100 schools signed up to the charter. And just to give you a little bit more insight about the benefits, again, many schools are starting in their journey. So it's about awareness. It's about understanding United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, truth and reconciliation calls to action. We have a national Indigenous economic strategy in Canada that was released in 2022. That should be in every business school. We want to share that kind of information. And we want to build up the confidence and knowledge of business schools because there's only a handful of Indigenous scholars. There's less than 20 Indigenous PhDs and DBAs in this country. So we need allies. We need, obviously, to grow more PhDs and DBAs, which are doctors of business admin. But building capacity is part of the Luminary Charter strategy. Collaborations. How do you connect with our Indigenous enterprise and economic community and NGOs? Finally, implementation, and then impact, which we measured every year through the survey. And we'll show our communities that we're making a change that's benefiting and creating well-being for everybody. So that's sort of it's a great little program. It's got, a number of features here. And basically, when you look at it, you're going to see the areas of impact. I think it'll resonate with your faculty and staff. So share it amongst your people. And like I said, although the membership fees have been removed and you can sign on for free, the membership commitment is just that commitment. A commitment, just like ISO, to work as leaders towards making change. So, as I said, we were at 10 institutions a few days ago. We're approaching 20 today. There's 4 pathways. There's other benefits like charter partners, all your faculty, staff get discounts in things like the summit and webinars and these types of things. So you can get more information at admin@iworks.org or go to the website luminary.works to download it, receive it, and you can sign up online. Terry Lynn, over to you for the 2nd annual Indigenous Innovation Summit coming up in Montreal.
Yay. So you may or may not have heard, but we are hosting our 2nd Indigenous Innovation Summit in partnership with the Desautels Faculty of Management and the Office of Indigenous Initiatives at McGill University. That's going to take place in Montreal, September 22nd to the 24th. We did launch registration on Monday. So if you didn't get it, I'm going to tell you, if you're connected to Luminary, check your junk box folder because I'm getting a bit of feedback that that's where some of the communications have gone to. We're going to work on getting that problem solved moving forward. But if you do want information, you can always reach out to any one of us on this call or email our admin@luminary.works and we will send you the information package. One of the things that I wanted to share with you all is that we do have a call for speakers that is open, and that information is posted on our website on luminary.works under events. You'll see the Indigenous Innovation Summit and all of the details that are there about the call for speakers. But essentially, what we'd like to do and what we're doing and showcasing at the Innovation Summit is really this community of practice and action. So when we're hearing from the Indigenous Engagement Survey, where are curriculum, Indigenous-led curriculum being showcased? Where do we have successful models of partnerships with Indigenous communities or business corporations that have collaborated on research and that have really moved the needle? So if your institution is doing something that's interesting, or if you've participated in something that you feel is worth sharing, we want to be able to provide that space to inspire others to see that, you know what? I can do this too, or hey, there's somebody that did something that I'm really interested in doing. How can I learn from them? How can we start building those connections amongst institutions so that we don't have to recreate the wheel? There's a lot of good work that's taking place, a lot that we don't even know about because we only had 48 institutions in the engagement survey in year one. So we're looking to expand and build that momentum. So take a look at the call for speakers, and if you know anybody that's doing something that would fit into that. Ultimately, we want to focus on this research agenda and creating more research collaborations that ultimately lead to innovation. And how does that fit into the bigger picture of the work that Luminary is doing under the Strategic Science Fund to stimulate innovation for Indigenous communities and ultimately for, the entire country, right? Um, so take a look at that. The link is in the chat. It is on our website, like I mentioned. And we also have opportunities for sponsorship. So if you are coming in from an institution or, part of corporate Canada, or you're in a position to be able to sponsor some of the breakout sessions, some of the conversations, or maybe it's going to be the coffee at lunch. We have all of those opportunities that are available as well to look at. They start, from 2,500, they go up to 15,000. So just depending on what you're able to do, but we do really value our partners and we will be showcasing them at the summit and hope to see some institutions coming in and supporting the work that we're doing in that type of way as well. So if you do want any information, always the Luminary at Works. I think all of our emails are on our website, so feel free to contact any one of us at any time, and we'll be happy to give you more information about any of those opportunities. So at the Indigenous Innovation Summit, who we're looking to see in the audience are, of course, our business school leaders, because they are a primary group that we are working with to collaborate with these Indigenous communities. So business school leaders, part of faculty as well. When we're talking about leaders, we don't want people to feel excluded. Everybody has important roles in the work that they're doing. So, come out if you're interested and you want to be a part of this movement. We're looking to have researchers in the room, Indigenous entrepreneurs and businesses who will be talking about the work that they're looking to do so that you can hear about the magnitude of Indigenous. I always say Indigenous brilliance that exists in this country because we are very sophisticated in how we're doing our business, how we're structuring our finances, and how we're integrating into the economy. So we will be able to hear from those that are leading in this space. We will also be have the company of Indigenous scholars and students. We are looking to collaborate with business schools who have Indigenous business student associations. So if you are one of them, please reach out because we would love to have your student leaders participate at the summit and share their experiences as students in institutions and also their vision for the future. So we will be really happy to have that. And then also innovation practitioners. There's so much going on when we think about AI, health innovation, energy. So if there's, we're talking about business, but it applies in such a broader context when we're looking to change this into economic transformation. So really want to bring that ecosystem together to be able to, always say like push the needle forward, right? And create some different opportunities and spaces for Indigenous people. So, what you can expect at the summit, we will be talking about Indigenous innovation and leadership. We have not confirmed our speakers publicly yet. But we are working behind the scenes to get some of the best and brightest in the community across the nation to come in and talk about some of the things that they are doing in their communities that are very innovative and advanced. We will also be hearing about the Business School Indigenous Engagement Survey findings. So we will have a comparison from the first year to the second year, hopefully showing progress in the right direction, but also talking about the opportunities that exist and creating some of those collaborations on the spot. Research collaborations and partnerships. So we are talking with different institutions, including the Tri Council, about ways that we can influence and create opportunities for more research funding to flow to institutions that are partners in partnership with Indigenous communities. We'll talk about curriculum and pedagogy innovation. What are people doing to integrate more Indigenous voices into their business school curriculum and how is that benefiting them? We're talking about Indigenous AI and emerging technologies. which are front and center of a lot of conversations nowadays. You can't really have a conversation without talking about AI, whether it's good, bad, or the ugly. We will have, I can say, Dr. Albert Marshall from Mi'kmaq, who is the scholar that coined the two-eye seeing approach, and he will talk about that in terms of how is intertwined with innovation and how it ties back to our Indigenous roots on how we've always took care of the land and sustained ourselves off of it for since time immemorial and plan to do so for at least the next 7 generations. We'll talk about Indigenous well-being and economic development and how that all ties into, community economic development when it comes to working with Indigenous communities, not so much from a corporate lens, but more about how does that enhance our well-being. And then we will have a lot of networking and collaboration and new partnerships. So it's going to be a really great space. We're looking to do a lot of collaborations and activities that will get people engaged and talking so that you will come in, you will leave having made a lot of new friends from attending the event. I will also note that registration is also capped. We are limited in terms of the space. So if you are interested, don't hesitate to register because you want to save your seat. We do expect to sell out. And then in terms of what's next, I'm coming to the question period next. So if you do have those questions, get them ready. So please participate in our 2026 Canadian Business School Indigenous Engagement Survey. Talk to it to your colleagues and friends from institutions, talk to it to your professors, talk about it to anybody that you think would really benefit from contributing to this. I think that it's something that will be very instrumental when it comes to how are we working with others to advance this Indigenous agenda? So this information is going to be really important and, not today, but 5 years from now, the cumulative impacts of this research and what it's going to be able to show to Canada. Also, sign up for the Charter for Change. It's a $300 registration fee for the institution. You will have recognition on our website. You will have discounts to the Innovation Summit registration fees if you are a Charter for Change member. So there are some, immediate savings that you make by once you pay the $300 registration fee, and that's open to faculty within your institution. So that's not just limited to 1 or 2 people per institution. So that is something to look at. And it's also all on the website as well under the membership section. We will be having our next webinar on July 8th at the same time. And that's going to be highlighting our Luminary Indigenous Innovation Scholars Circle. So we have a circle that's part of our governance at Luminary. We have an international advisory circle, we have a national advisory circle, and we have a scholars circle. And what we're going to hear from the scholars is the different research projects that they are currently working on and how does that fit into the work that we're doing here at Luminary, whether it's about indigenizing business schools or, how does it lead to innovation? How is it creating more opportunity for Indigenous businesses, that kind of flavor, I guess. We will share more information about it, but put it into your calendar. We're going to have a whole different panel of speakers, so we're really excited about that. If you haven't already done so, follow us on LinkedIn. We are Luminary Network. You'll see our logo there when you search it up, but we are pretty active on that. It's a great place to stay up to date on all of the things that are happening at Luminary. And of course, if you are able to, please share any of the events that we have within your network, because we always appreciate that, working with our collaborators to help spread the word of what we are doing here. So with that, I will open it up for questions before I go to the final slide, which is a Slido. And the Slido is just part of information that we have to collect for SSF. It's anonymous. It's just 2 questions in a survey, and it's really helpful for us when we're doing our reporting back to the government. So open it up for questions now. We have a few minutes here. So anybody want to kick us off? And can the PowerPoint be shared? Yes, absolutely, Charlie. We can get you a copy of the PowerPoint, no problem. Anybody? anybody have any questions? I can't, and
Yeah.
just raise your hands or do you have any comments?
I'll make a comment while people are thinking about questions. Um, Terry Lynn underscored sort of the power of knowledge, and that's what comes from the survey. Tasha gave you the picture of what we're creating, which is a collective benchmark. You would all agree that Canada needs innovation, given the world we live in. Canada ranks in the G7 at the bottom in terms of innovation. Britain, Israel, France, Sweden, way ahead. So you're actually seeing advertisements on TV about innovation. So here's an opportunity. Luminary, we are like an exchanger, an exchange. In fact, we sort of say it's the Luminary Exchange. It's the only platform that sits deliberately at the intersection of academic, research, business schools, and Indigenous economic enterprise. So as you mentioned, look at the power of the Indigenous economy. It's over $52 billion. If we can harness that, and Terry Lynn, you mentioned tri-councils. For those of you who don't know, the tri-councils are the SSHRC, Social Sciences Humanities Research Council, NSERC, National Sciences Engineering Research Council, and CIR, the Canadian Institutes for Health Research. But there are many others. There's Innovations Canada. There's National Research Council and others. We could be harnessing those dollars on research collaborations focused on Indigenous economic priorities, challenges, issues, and opportunities that could benefit everybody. So that's sort of the application of and why this survey is so important. And I think that stimulated a question from Charlie.
Yeah, hi, thank you so much. It all sounds so exciting. I was curious to hear a little bit more, or wondering if you can share a little bit more about, so you mentioned the different educational institutions. So I was particularly interested in the Indigenous educational institutions that I know it was just speculative whether or not they have, business school leadership programs, that kind of stuff. Um, I'm just curious about DeGroote has worked a bit with Six Nations Polytechnic, but aside from that, that's about the extent of my familiarity. And I would just love to hear a little bit more and, what those schools are like looking for and partnership, like what the landscape is.
Sure. I can take that one. So 2 years ago, Marsha Joseph is on this call from Indigenous Institutes Consortium, and so is Matt from Six Nations Polytechnic. So, Matt, your retired president, Rebecca Jameson, and I, friends, and been connected on this. We presented at the Indigenous Institutes Consortium in Halifax 2 years ago, a prize about what Luminary is doing. Of course, the Institutes Consortium is very organized in Ontario, I think with seven or nine institutions. And so we're reaching out to people like Marsha to make Indigenous controlled institutions that have admin programs aware, business programs, make them aware of this survey. And they're invited and certainly welcome to participate. So get the word out. And like I said, I think word of mouth is everything. If you can promote this amongst CEGEPs, colleges, business schools, this will just increase the participating schools and obviously help us move this innovation ecosystem forward.
Thank you so much.
So while we are getting into the last questions, I will put the Slido up and we will start. So like I said, it's anonymous. It's a simple yes or no for the first question. The second question that we'll go to, we'll give you guys a couple of minutes to get this one answered. There is a second question, so leave your phones open. And it's just EDI. Like I said, totally voluntary and anonymous. So we really do appreciate it because the government does require that we collect this type of information in the work that we're doing. Now, with that, does anybody else have any more comments or questions that they'd like to share?
Can I just make a comment? This is Tavia
Oh, Tavia, hi. You're just breaking up there.
from Gabriel Dumont Institute. I can't figure out how to put my hand up.
That's okay.
Hi.
There you are. We can
No,
see
I
you
don't
now.
have a particular. Oh, I'll turn my video off. I'll just leave the audio on.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have a question. I just really appreciate the work that you're doing. This kind of, lives really in a place that's important to me. I've done a lot of work around um, right from labor market to entrepreneurship and now to innovation. And the research that I'm focusing on is kind of like what does that look like, and how does that build into nation building? So I feel like sometimes I think about these things a lot, and it can be, you kind of feel like you're on an island by yourself. So I just really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this dialogue and to hear that it's important to somebody else, across Turtle Island. So just a huge thank you for letting me join today, and initiating these dialogues and this research.
Caveat, for those of you who don't know, she's been around the game a long time. So been involved in education, economic development, nation building. Gabriel Dumont Institute is in Saskatchewan. And Tavia, when I saw Octavia, I thought maybe that was a cousin, or I did not know. So it is you, Octavia. You are the Tavia. Um, Tavia, I'm meeting with Ryan Harding from the Métis Nation Economic Development Corporation Thursday. We'll get an invite to you. That's the type of feedback we need, like Tavia, talking about how it can be relevant to Indigenous economy, to Indigenous communities. David Newhouse, a great a great leader, professor at Trent University, contributed to the Royal Commission, said back in 2019, we need no more research on problems. We need research on solutions. And there's a whole industry out there making money spitting out the same problems. We need research on solutions. And that's where, Tavia, thank you so much, because it is a wide open agenda. We get to define what our research agenda should be. And there is dollars sitting there through different research agencies. And the more leadership voices we have, the more we're going to be able to transform this whole research ecosystem.
Yeah. And with that, we did switch to the second question. So if you could just take a minute and fill that out, that would be greatly appreciated. All the links are in the chat. So Marnie Hope, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge Marnie. She's new to our team. She joined us in April. She is our core programs and services manager. So welcome, Marnie, to your first Luminary webinar, and you did great supporting us in the back end there. So you may hear from Marnie now and again as we do the work that we're doing here. And any other comments, or else we can give you back 10 minutes of your day and wrap this up. Oh, quiet. Take that as everybody's satisfied and we're fully informed and gonna do the survey and join us at the Innovation Summit if you can. All right. Well, with that, I will say, well, all Wen, have a great afternoon and stay safe, and we will see you again on our journey. Namotas.